In the lection before, you learned how to install Focus and use it with the standard settings. For example, the standard base model. And the results we can create already with that standard settings are quite stunning. But there's a possibility to create even better images. And because this is such an important aspect, I want to show it to you from the beginning before we dive into the functionality of Focus. Because also for myself, this was very important in the beginning to find out how to install different base models. And for me, it was a little bit confusing. And that's why I think it makes sense to have a look at exactly that process right in the beginning before we start looking at the actual functionality. With that being said, let's have a look onto my screen. I prepared a little presentation to show you how we can customize the Google Colab and how we can install different base models. And a base model is basically a system we can install in our Google Colab to create different outputs. And there's, for example, a base model called Realism Engine STXL, which creates very, very nice and realistic images. And I want to show you in that course as an example how to install that base model in your Google Colab and how to use it in Focus. And we will also see later in that lection where you find that base model and how you download it and so on. But first, let's have a look onto my presentation to see what we are about to learn here. Good. This is, as I said, the base model we want to use, and you find it at civitai.com. I will also provide a paper in the download section of this lection where you find the link to civitai.com, where you find this base model and many others, and you will also find the different codes we need to include in our Google Colab to make this run. But no worries, I will explain everything in detail in that lection. So when we want to use exactly that base model, we need two different pieces of information that we need to include in two lines of code, as you see it down here. Yes, codes and programming, this sounds super difficult, but you will see in a minute that it's super, super easy. Trust me on that. Good. As I said, we need two information. One is the name of the download file. Yeah, when we download this model, there's a name, and this name we need to include in that line of code, and we need a number, and that number we get by right pressing on that download button here on Civit AI. Then we get quite a long piece of code, and within that code there's a number, exactly that number, and we just need that number, and this number we will include in that line of code. And together with these two pieces of information, we are able to put these codes in our Google Colab, and afterwards we can use this base model in Focus. Sounds difficult, but you will see it's actually not, and it's super, super easy. So what do we do now in our Google Colab? We do this in a minute as well, live on my screen, but I want to show you first what you are about to learn. So when you're in the Google Colab starting screen, you go here with your mouse, and then you have the opportunity to add a line of code, and you do that. And afterwards, you insert these two lines of code we just prepared the second before, and you paste them just in that new line of code so that it's now included here. And after that, you take the line up here and you cut it out. Then you create another line of code down here, and you just cut it out and you paste it down here so that we are moving this line of code from up here to down here. And what are we doing here? We are basically customizing this little line of code that before we start Focus, we are downloading and installing first a different base model. And in this particular example, it's the base model Realism Engine STXL. Super easy. And afterwards, if your Google Colab looks like this, you have to press 3 times and run each of these lines of code after each other. And afterwards, you will also see run on public URL. You click that, and then you're in Focus, and you can use the new base model also in Focus. And now we will do exactly that on my screen so that you can follow it and do it totally easy on your own. So the first step to install a new base model is to go to the website civitai.com and to go to the section models, and there you will find a lot of different base models. And no worries, you will find the link to civitai.com also in the download section. So when you click on that link, you will land on that website, and here on the models section, as I just said, you will find a lot of different base models. A little warning at that point, many of them are not safe for work, so don't do that at work. Just a little warning. Okay, but there are also super normal base models like the realism engine. And to find that model, we go up here to the search box and we click realism engine. And then we wait a little bit, and there it already is. We click on that link, and now the base model or the overview of that base model should be loading. As you can see, I have a pretty bad internet connection, but I'm still able to do all that. Good, here it is. We are at the overview of this realism engine, which is our example base model in that video. And now we need two pieces of information to be able to use that base model in our own focus. And as I already showed you in the presentation, to do that, we have to click here on download. And then the download will start. And first, we just need the file name of exactly that file, and we have to write it down. I will stop the download because I already did that. If you go to the Word document, you see this is the file name. I already saved it earlier. Good. And now we need the second part of the information, and this is this specific number. And how do we get that? Super easy. We right press here on download and then on copy address of the link. This is German, but in English it's copy the link address. Okay, and if we do that, we get this link address, and if we go back to Word and we paste it, we will get a pretty long link. But all we need here is this little number in the middle. It's a 6-digit number. We cut it out. We can delete the rest of the link. And this is the second part of the information we need. So now we have the file name and we have this specific number. And afterwards, we take that file name, we cut it out, we put it here at the end of this link, but without space, without anything. And we take also this little number, we cut it out, and we put it here. And no worries, for that example of the realism engine, I already did this for you, so you don't have to follow these steps. But in case you want to install another base model, you have to do exactly that. And I already provided in the download section this little PDF file, and here you see already the lines of code prepared to install the realism engine. But in case you want to install another base model, you can just go back to this PDF file and just change these final parts of these two codes, and then you're able to install whatever base model you want. So in the next step, we have to include these two lines of code into our Google Colab to be able to use the new base model in focus. And that's what we do now. So in your case, you can just copy these lines of code. I will use the Word document I just created because it's a little bit easier to copy the links. I do a copy and then I go to my Google Drive. And there fully automatically Google Colab created a folder where all my Google Colabs are stored. And here is the one we just created. I double click on that, and now I'm back in the Google Colab that we saw in the lecture before. Good, and now we have to customize this little code up here the way you saw it in the presentation. So the first thing you do is you click here on add line of code, and we get another line of code. And then I just paste these two links in here. Good, we don't need a distance here, but then it looks like this. And this is basically these two lines of code, which are now included here in our Google Colab. And then we need another line of code, and then we cut out this line of code up here, use Control X, then we go down here and with Control V, we paste that line of code in here. That's it. And now we customized our Google Colab so that we can use and install a new base model, in this case the realism engine. And now, as in the section before, we just have to click connect, wait a little bit until we get connected to Google Colab, and when that is done, we can start running all these 3 lines of code one after each other. So we start with the first one. This is always done in just a couple of seconds. And when this is done, you will see a little check mark here on the side. You see 8 seconds. Okay, then we go to the next one. And when we click here, play, the base model, in this case, the realism engine, starts downloading. And you can see here's a little percentage. And when that is done, the base model is downloaded and installed. And after that, we can click the last line of code to install the final folders and information we need to make Focus run. And afterwards, we can click again on run on public URL, and we're ready to use the new base model. So we wait until this is done, and then I'm back to you. Good, now it's done and the realism engine is downloaded. As you can see, it's 6.4 gigabyte, so it's quite a big file and it can take quite a while. In my case, it took maybe 2 minutes. And now we can go to the third line of code, click play, and also run this last code. And this basically takes the same amount of time than when you just run normal Google Colab without the customizing. So we'll wait another couple of minutes. Then I will come back to you, and then we are ready to use the customized Google Colab. Good, now this is also done, and you can see we see again the 2 links, and as always, click on the second one, run on public URL. And if you click on that link, another window is opening, and then we are again in the starting screen of Focus. And now we would be able to use the new base model. But more on that in the next lections, when we actually learn how to use Focus, what functions we have here, where to click, where to find the parameters, and so on. So stay tuned, and we will see us in the next lecture.